Thank you. Hi. I know, I'm so grateful to talk about Bitcoin and also freedom. I mean, without freedom, why do we even need money, right? So it's a unique opportunity to talk about with Bitcoin and freedom. As you can see this satellite photo of my country, do you see that there's a black hole in between South Korea and China? That's where I was born. I was born in a complete darkness. I often joke about that, we have Earth Day in North Korea every day. It might be good for the environment, but not good for the people. In this 21st century, people do not even know what internet is. Growing up in North Korea, I still remember when I was young, the government was telling people that you should deposit money in the bank. And then people did, because we trusted our dear leader. I mean, he was our God to us. Once we put our money in the bank account, it was locked. Nobody could get the money out of the bank accounts. Only people who had a connection to the bankers and the government officials who could get the money out. And so this is a real struggle, right? In North Korea, private property is banned. You cannot own a car, you cannot own a house, you cannot own anything. So therefore, if you make money in the black market system, you have to hide it somewhere in the house. And one time, actually, I still remember my mother's best friend. There was many thieves in North Korea. She was hiding the cash, the hard-earned cash, inside where she was cooking food. And the husband came without knowing and burned the whole thing. So her life saving gone like that. So in North Korea, because we don't know how to hide the cash, I still remember my mother would take the stockings out and put the cash and wrapping around her burning body parts to hide the money, because that was the only way we could carry cash. And by the 2009, we all know that North Korea strived to become a socialist paradise where there's no inequality. So the regime decided, how are we going to make everybody equal? They decided in 2009, we are going to do something called the currency exchange, which means previous money that you had means worth nothing, literally trash.
That people had been saving for decades.
Yes, in the black market for like 70 years, people working in the black markets and saving this money, and the regime wanted to make sure that everybody is equal and take all the power from North Korean people. So they did something called the currency exchange, and they said each family now, they give them only 1 week, 7 days.
1 week, you had 1 week to turn in your old money.
Yes, and they said, and for the Pyongyang people, the country people, only 3 days. Each family can only get new cash that was worth of buying 2 kilograms of rice. So if you're a billionaire, millionaire, your money meant nothing the next day. And after that currency exchange, North Korean people now actually do not have any North Korean money, and they are actually trying to find a way to get US dollars and Chinese yuan.
So the regime found a very cruel way to try to make everyone equal. And this is just a theme that was in these songs that they made you memorize and talk about when you were a child, this paradise that you were in where everyone was equal. In reality, it's sort of like the Animal Farm. Some were more equal than others. And what she just described to you in 2009 is known as demonetization. So cash can help people, and it does help people around the world. A lot of people save around the world, especially in dollars. Under their mattress or somewhere in their house. But there's a very cruel way that the government can even take that from you, and that's, again, called demonetization, where they say, oh, all that money, that's no longer worth anything anymore. And as you're just telling us, they only gave people a week or even a few days, depending on which caste system you were in. In North Korea, people are geographically separated in castes, depending on the loyalty of your family during the Korean War. And they basically said you only have a certain amount of time to turn that in, and then in exchange you'll get this new money, but you can only get a certain amount. So, I mean, we don't often hear about finance and economics and money in the human rights discussions. I worked on North Korea issues for years and years and years and years and never heard about this or learned about this until I started asking questions about Bitcoin and money. And in that vein, when you were growing up, did they teach you about money in school?
No, I mean, the word in North Korea, profit, is banned.
The word profit is banned.
So, I mean, they think money as evil, and any business, enterprise, private business is evil. So they don't teach us anything about economy and money. So people basically, what we have to do is relying on the government who is going to give us public rations. But they didn't do that. So our only choice was dying from starvation, and that's how I escaped from North Korea and was 13 years old.
Can you talk a little bit about the role that money played in your escape at all, and maybe how it was a limiting factor, or how you wish you had a different kind of money? Take us through that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's so surreal for me coming from North Korea, actually sitting in Miami, this very liberal place right now with this full of electricity. I know, it's what a life. But when I escaped from North Korea at 13, I arrived in China, and they sold me for less than $300 as a sex slave. And there are right now 300,000 North Korean women in China are being sold. The reason why we are being sold is because we cannot have bank accounts. And when North Korean women get captured and sent back to North Korea, if they somehow able to hide $50, they don't have to die in the prison camp. But the regime is so vicious. They even check everybody's parts you cannot even imagine, and then they even check after you go to bathroom. So there's no way you can hide anything, or jewelry or money in your body. But something like Bitcoin, if you remember the code or something, you go out, you talk to the broker, they give you the money, you can bribe, you can come out. But because North Korea has no medium like that, they've been suffering and dying from this tragedy.
I think what Yeonmi's describing is kind of the end game of fiat money is totally centrally planned money system that the rulers can arbitrarily change at any time. And that's what the North Korean people have had to endure. So Yeonmi, we'll start with you. You told me something very interesting about how some people in China are using Bitcoin to help aid North Koreans who are stuck there. Again, let's remember, people like Yeonmi who escape into China, they don't necessarily speak Chinese. They've never been to these places before. 70% of the people who escape are women, and they're trafficked or interned in some way. They have no bank account. They have no access to any sort of money system. So Yeonmi, can you walk us through how you've heard that Bitcoin is kind of penetrating this system?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'm sure not a lot of you have seen North Korean before, right? Because right now, there are only 209 North Korean defectors made it to America.
How many?
209 during the last 80 years. So most of North Koreans, when they escape, they do not end up like me in America.
Or even in South Korea.
No.
Most don't make it. Most get stuck in China or die.
Right. So they end up in China. And China is a communist party. They do not believe in human rights. And they sponsor Kim Jong-un to stay in power and be a dictator, right? So therefore, they do not want to help these people. And not only that, China had a one-child policy. Because of that, they have 30 million men cannot find women as their wives.
Especially in northeastern China, which borders North Korea. It's the poorest part of China, and it's the part where there's like the largest gender gap, essentially.
Yeah. So they buy North Korean girls like me as their sex slaves. And when these women go to and meet their supposedly Chinese husband, they have a child. If the women get captured and sent back to North Korea, mother gonna send to prison camp and die, and child, the problem is, cannot get a state ID. Chinese government does not accept the child as a Chinese. So they become a stateless children. And these children, without ID, government hookah or something called, they cannot even go to elementary school. So there are 300,000 North Korean women right now in China, and the children are about up to even like 1 million of them. We don't know quite fully how many are there. So now there are underground church groups starting this like a homeschooling, sending Bitcoin to a Chinese broker, and they buy school supplies to children who cannot go to elementary school, so they don't end up being trafficked and going to brothels and become a prostitute. So they can somehow get educated and find a way out. And there's a way that we can empower these women and children through Bitcoin. Thank you.
I had mentioned to you earlier today that when I first met you, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, how crazy is it that one day we'd be speaking together at a Bitcoin conference? And you didn't know what Bitcoin was at the time, and now you've been studying it. You know a lot about it. What do you think? If you could go back to North Korea and start telling people that there's this currency that's digital, that governments don't control, I mean, once that starts to pick up traction inside North Korea, what do you think will happen?
I think that's a thing. Like when this morning we had talked about how the fiat currency, under fiat currency, 169 million people died, right? Like in my life, nothing has been more evil than government has been. I think North Korean regime is almost testament how evil a government can be to individuals. So I think if North Korean people, there's a way they can understand that they can have their own autonomy, decide what money they can buy, what they can do, I think we will see a different world. It's gonna be a world that we cannot even possibly fathom right now, because we've been always under this government's control. And when imagine that individuals have that power in our hands, we can create a much better world that nobody needs to be sold.